Friends, I'm inspired to do this episode based on the scripture readings that we are hearing at Mass these days, but then also on a rather disturbing experience that I had yesterday when I went grocery shopping. I was at the Indian store and I was talking to the man behind the counter. I've known him for some time. And we began to talk about the effects of coronavirus in India, the lockdown, and how especially the poor are really hurting from all of this. And for some reason, this man went off on the Chinese people. He began to blame the Chinese people for the grief that the entire world is experiencing. And I was aghast and I called him out on it. And I said to him, listen, you can't blame an entire race, an entire people for what happened in one country. I said, simply not the right thing to do. He did not agree with me. And then I said to him, I said, listen, you are an intelligent man. You're an educated man. I said, if you talk like this, what is going to happen to the world? I said, this is dangerous. And then I pointed it out to him and I said, listen, this is a form of racism. He shook his head, and folks, I don't know if I'm going back to this grocery store again. All I know is that I found it compelling to nip this form of racism in the bud when I saw it. I came back home rather disturbed, and I was thinking, I said to myself, the virus has not discriminated between peoples. The virus has not discriminated between the rich or the poor, between religions, between nations and ethnicities. And if this virus that is brainless, if this virus that has no intelligence and no wisdom, if this virus does not discriminate, then how much more we who are intelligent people, who have wisdom, who have brains, how much more should we be people who do not discriminate? I hope that we can learn from what is going on in the world right now. I hope we can learn from the virus that what is at stake right now is not our nationality, is not our ethnicity or our religion. What is at stake right now is the human race. We are in this together, and we must face this together. Unfortunately, the history of the world is such that we've always found people to persecute. So we have anti-Semitism, the Holocaust. And then as migration began to the New World, the Irish were persecuted. There was prejudice against the Italians. There was prejudice against the Polish. And after the war, there was prejudice against the Germans. And then 9/11 happened. And then they began to blame 9/11 on the entire Muslim population, even though it was just few radical Islamists and terrorists who carried out 9/11. And then these days, we are prejudiced against refugees and immigrants, making them a villainous people. And I believe the latest is going to be the Chinese people. I really hope that we learn from this virus that either we are going to all succeed together or we are all going to perish together. So if you encounter prejudice, if you encounter hatred, if you encounter racism, if you encounter any kind of discrimination, may I please ask you to nip it in the bud. And when you hear people talk like that, whether it is our political leaders or whether it is our religious leaders, whether it is your friends or your neighbors, please let them know that we are first human beings. First of all, we are all human beings and that we must respect each other with the dignity that God has created every one of us. I hope my experience and my message to you finds a resonance in our nation and in the world today. Folks, please let us act intelligent. Let's act wise. And let's set aside prejudice. Rather, as Jesus says, please, can we simply love our neighbor?